Hello, travelers, and welcome to the Horror Greenbook, the channel that takes you from coast to coast and con to con. I am your travel guide, Brendon, here in the scary sanctuary, bringing to you a review that's very near and dear to my heart, and I'll tell you why. But the film is Ryan Coogler's and Michael B. Jordan's brand new epic, Sinners. Well, to start off, I've always been a fan of the concept of the great American film. This is Coogler's attempt at that pure Americana. The power of music is a huge theme with this film. It's more than a horror film, let me tell you that. It pulls from multiple genres and it could grab possible Academy Award attention post The Substance. So let me start by saying that from the moment that I saw the trailer, I felt I knew what a good portion of what this would entail because for the longest I've always felt that the area where I'm from is so rich in folklore. I mean, the most famous legend in all of music revolves around Robert Johnson and selling his soul at the crossroads to the devil in order to receive the talent to play the guitar like no other had at that point, only to later become the first inductee to the infamous 27 Club. Though, as unbelievable it may be in reality, it's almost accepted as fact. So I grew up as a young boy hearing these stories and being proud of having that culture in my blood. And it's not too dissimilar to Anne Rice and how she felt about her hometown of New Orleans. So I can easily see this being the region where I'm from's own film, like Ease by You is to the Louisiana area. So, first off, I'm extremely connected to this film and the culture that it represents. My family is from the Arkansas Delta region, which is across the Mississippi River from the Mississippi Delta region. So it is all connected with our own little tri state area consisting of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee. So the setting of Clarksdale, Mississippi is an hour and a half away from where I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, which is pretty much the capital in regards to the Delta blues and the formation of rock and roll as a genre. So, Ryan Coogler and Oscar winning composer Ludwig Göransson came to Memphis themselves to do research. So, this project is deeply personal to Coogler as this is made in memory of his beloved uncle James, who was the patriarch of the Mississippi branch of his family tree. So, though this is set in a small town, this is such a grandiose movie. And grandiose and epic are the two words that keep coming to mind. Epic is appropriate because of the story that it tells of coming home, just like the Odyssey, or multiple people from different walks of life coming together for something like the Fellowship of the Ring. So this is something that horror fans aren't really used to getting. Ryan borrows the taking of a seemingly normal but life changing day for multiple characters from Fruitville Station, the emotions of wanting these main characters to win and finally break through in life from Creed, and the action packed stakes of Black Panther and rolls them into one. And I love when directors have skills that they have picked up in their earlier films and later they show their mastery of those said skills like this. So, in regards to the cast, stellar cast. Michael B. Jordan, of course, is the starring attraction, and he does probably his best work with his toughest assignment yet with playing dual roles as Smoke and Stack, which is a loving reference to the iconic song Smoke Stack Lightning by blues slash rock legend Howlin' Wolf. I love how we get two prominent horror film plots involving twins with this and the monkey. And while the monkey plays how vastly different identical twins can be, Sinners is more subtle with the difference with the twins, but with the longer you stay with the story, you're able to learn who is the more boisterous and who is the more laid back twin. Other things, such as the colors that Smoke and Stack are wearing, are quick identifiers, with one wearing red and the other wearing blue. Everyone pulls their weight, even first timers. And so let's just go ahead and start off with a major shout out to Delroy Lindo, who plays Delta Slim. And he's mainly a comic relief character, but he's so damn lovable. He really shows his veteran chops as the elder statesman in the cast. Him and Preacher Boy have a bit of a passing of the torch thing, as his character is one of those old blues masters that is pretty much like the representation of the foundation or the old guard, but he's done all that he possibly can, while Sammy, on the other hand, is the future that will push the art forward and further than anyone of the previous generation of blues musicians could imagine. So we'll move forward. Academy Award nominee Haley Steinfeld, absolutely loved her in True Grit. She plays a very complex character who is more than a love interest. I'm glad that they explored more depth than what I was expecting with her character, but I absolutely loved her, spoiler alert, her 90s wardrobe choice. Very Debbie Mazar, very Fran Drescher, very Groove is in the Heart. And another thing that I absolutely loved is that she was named Mary, which is my mom's name. So that really tugged at me, being that if it weren't for my mother, I wouldn't be here expressing my love for the horror genre. We have Jack O'Connell as Remick, and he is an extremely charismatic as the main antagonist. I don't know what it is with Coogler and his having very likable villains in his films, but I totally like it and I'm here for it. My last cast highlight is for Miles Canton, who plays Sammy, aka Preacher Boy, who is Smoke and Stack's younger cousin. He is what we call back home a PK, or a preacher's kid. And it's very true to the type. As the story takes off, he has to make a decision in regards to his life. Should he follow his father and stay close to the church, or should he follow his dream of playing the music that he's drawn to, and that also can come with a lot of sin and temptation? Miles ends up being the secret weapon in the project because this is his first major work in acting, and he completely knocks it out of the park. Let me tell you. Don't be surprised if he is mentioned in Best Supporting Actor contention come award season. Authenticity. Authenticity to the time and the era, which is very similar to Robert Eggers. He has demonstrated it for Fruitville Station with the Bay Area, Creed with Philly. These are people that my grandparents would have known as young people, and I feel it. The terms used, the accents, the dancing, the nicknames, they all remind me of home. It captures the bubbling sexuality of the era. The blues is filled with innuendo and overt sexual lyrics. If you look up the history of dirty blues, or the lyrics of Shave 'em Dry by Lucille Bogan, and tell me it doesn't sound like Sexy Red, who has a very blue sounding who has a very blue sounding name akin to Tampa Red, or Glorilla, who is from Memphis, just like myself, would say. The blues has always had tales of the macabre, murder, betrayal, and the supernatural. One thing of note is the economics of this community. People are paying with different forms of money, being that a lot of them are sharecroppers working the same land that their ancestors were enslaved on. I am a descendant of sharecroppers, and my parents actually grew up picking cotton before school and during summer in order to help earn money for their families. So it was always described how difficult the work was, and even children as young as 5 years old would learn how to pick. So I'm very thankful that my family moved to Memphis by the time that I was born. So I thankfully never got to experience that during my summers like my older country cousins. Um, there are several scenes where characters have to make deals. Stack making the deal with the young girl to watch the truck, and he's telling her to know her worth. There's also a deal with the shop owners in regards to their services and how it ties into the community and how their economics work. Um, bartering. Bartering would be a major part of the culture. The problem is that the twins are trying to make money as well as trying to provide a haven for their community, which doesn't have the most cash. Such as the aforementioned Robert Johnson. Later in the film, the twins and the characters in the juke joint are presented with an offer from Remick that they seriously must have considered in their heads. What do you think of Vampires for World Peace? It's a very interesting proposition. The vampires telling them, we're all here working together, we're dancing, we're having a good time, like things are supposed to be. It's a very tempting thing for a black person in the Jim Crow South to hear. Guys, tons of suspense. Um, Probably way more suspense and drama than horror, especially in the beginning, being that this is a Southern Gothic folk film. I think it will serve well for those that aren't huge horror nerds. One notable scene filled with suspense involves Haley Steinfeld after having a confrontation with the vampires where you are left on pins and needles for a bit. Um, I can honestly say that this is probably the closest horror has come to receiving something that both critics and fans will both almost universally accept into the zeitgeist. Probably since Silence of the Lambs, though some people don't consider that horror. We don't listen to them. But even further than that, for something that is undoubtedly horror, would be The Exorcist. So think of how films like that and Star Wars blew away audiences. I joke, but I'm serious when I say that all the time. Um, Seeing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 35 years ago was one of the greatest film going experiences of my life. And it's no joke when I say that I haven't had that feeling leaving a movie since until seeing Sinners. This is what horror fans say that they've been waiting and wanting with an original story that isn't a remake or a sequel. I'm hoping that they run to support it in droves. All right, that scene, that scene, that scene. Sammy's main performance of I Lied to You is something special. Not only is it a great song, but the way that it is shot is breathtaking. The way that the camera moves is so seamless, and as the song transitions, the viewer does as well through the past, present, and future. You see Sammy with his guitar, and then you see an ancestor playing a kora, which is a West African stringed instrument that you pluck? Or, is it a lute that this ancestor is playing? Regardless, it highlights that the guitar is something that we've always had in our blood. Next, we see a Parliament or funkadelic type guitarist in his 70s rock star attire. And then you see a DJ moving the crowd. And as we move through the dancing crowd, you see hip hop breakdancers. You see modern women twerking next to the women in the juke joint, gyrating. You see traditional African dancers doing moves not too dissimilar to the robot. Even Bo and Grace Chow, as they join the party and dance, are subconsciously calling upon their ancestors. And before I knew it, I looked and there was a dancer doing Memphis Jukin. And bam, immediately it hit me. I was being wrapped up in the power of this scene. I have personally lived to see Memphis Jukin be an underground dance as a kid, to watching videos on YouTube of people in Eastern Europe learning how to do it. I mean, my family and I are connected to this. I mean, these would have been people that my grandparents would have known or they would have partied with in establishments like this. My parents would have also experienced things similar to this in their young days, hence the funk guitarist. And here I am being represented, knowing that the culture will continue. Before the scene ended, let me tell you, I had tears falling from my eyes because of how touching it was. Truly. And it makes you think of how influential moments like how James Brown and Michael Jackson could move, or how Chuck Berry and Jimi Hendrix could play guitar, and certain people just know that those gifts come from a connection to just something higher. I'm reminded of how powerful and trance-like it is seeing Jimmy burn his guitar at Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. Thank goodness, a moment like that was recorded because we get to witness how special and how life-changing being in that energy can be. Not only was I touched, but all of the energy that is being in the air is obviously, luring the main vampire of Remick in by this music. And he seems to have an Irish backstory because he tries to come into the club and he tries to pay, he gets turned away. But, that temptation from, getting some real live money coming into the club gets to, smoke and stack. So the gold that he's paying in, he says, is from another place and another time. And he also mentions being done wrong by people that came to take his family's land. So I'm assuming that he's referring to the English. And, in regards to the folklore with the vampires, it doesn't add anything new to the vampire lore other than the musical connection, which is totally enough for me. It shows that the satanic panic didn't just start in the 80s. It's been around since the beginning. And the villains, extremely likable. The Riz slider points are turned all the way up if you get bit, that's for sure. And they had a bit of a dance macabre scene, and how diabolical everything looked in the movement of everyone's body is reminiscent of the famous shot in The Seventh Seal, if you've seen that. This is how the ministers at that time interpreted the youth and the wild gyrating that they would do to this devil's music. And it also ties back to the legend of Robert Johnson with the guitar that Sammy carries throughout the film, and saying that it used to belong to who is considered to be the father of the Delta Blues, the legendary Charlie Patton. And he's the man who is more known. He's the man who more known bluesmen such as Robert Johnson and Howling Wolf sat at his feet in their young years. We get tons of hoodoo representation with Annie, who is Smoke's ex-wife, I'm assuming, or estranged wife, with her being a witch. You have a lot of representation with mojo bags and their importance. Um, Annie and Smoke, they have a past filled with love and unfortunate tragedy. And I have a liking for Annie because she really reminds me of my grandmother, Medea, and how she always had a solution for everything in her garden, being that she is what I now know as a green witch. And I've heard complaints that, the witch is now the new Catholic priest with this and the exorcist believer, and how they have all the answers for the occult and supernatural situations. But to be fair, you don't really ask the doctor how they know how to save the person that's dying. You just kind of hope that they're able to do it. Am I right? So, um, she's a gentle but tough woman that exemplifies what women in that area are like. Very resourceful, and you don't want to mess with them, because they've known how to shoot since they were little girls. And you don't get any Mary Sues here. These are women that are based in reality. Um, it really reminds me a lot of music biopics. So, if you are a fan of films like Ray, Walk the Line, or Great Balls of Fire, you should enjoy this. While it's not a musical, it has a lot of elements that one would see from a Broadway show. And I really wouldn't be surprised if this is adapted for a Broadway show in the future. And I would actually gladly welcome it. It would be a nice fit. So if you are a fan of musical theater or someone who's a more casual fan who just enjoys like Hamilton or Hadestown, then you will likely really vibe with this as well. I can't help but think of the early folk music recordings that took place in the early 20th century for preservation of these songs. So, if you're a music nerd, then this is the film for you. Another great movie that comes to mind is Green Room, and how that would make for an awesome double feature with this as well, because, the love for music is ingrained in it. Speaking of music, definitely have to get the soundtrack and score. As I've said, this is put together by an Oscar winning composer who won for Black Panther and more recently for Oppenheimer. I love how at certain moments of the film score, we get these very dark, almost death metal guitar notes. And there's even a song with Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, and that's a banger, y'all. So definitely want to check that out. And, that's a very awesome thing because it ties into the influence and the reach that the blues music these poor people are playing just goes out into the world. Um, from Dusk Till Dawn, Let the Right One In, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, East Bayou. All of these remind me a little bit of what Sinners brings to the table. You also get a scene that reminds me a lot of John Carpenter's The Thing, and it has to be an obvious nod. So fans of that film are going to surely enjoy that, and the little bits of humor that are very similar to the humor that are in that scene in John Carpenter's classic film. And Coogler has expressed that this film has a lot of inspiration from some of his favorite films. So be on the lookout for plenty of Easter eggs, and I can't wait to go into that on my live spoiler-filled discussion with Sinners. So, representation of how the Mississippi Delta region is a melting pot of cultures, various folklores, guys. You get stuff from Native American folklore, African folklore, Irish folklore. All of these things come together, and in getting the juke joint opened, it's very getting the band together, like the Blues Brothers. So it's very fun, guys. It's filled with all these different moments. Um, even great historical notes that people wouldn't necessarily know about unless they were there, like Asian representation in Mississippi with the Chinese shop owners Bo and Grace Chow being a part of the community, which is very historically accurate, and why there's a lot of fusion in a lot of historically black areas that have always had restaurants or grocery stores owned by Asian people. Um, Check out the books The Mississippi Chinese, Between Black and White, and Chopsticks in the Land of Cotton, Lives of the Mississippi Delta Chinese, to learn more about this interesting tidbit. Listening to their accents, they are likely at least first generation Americans, with their young daughter being second generation, since Chinese immigrants started reaching that region around the late 1870s. Um, Mid and post credit scene. Guys, don't leave the theater too early. Stick around. Thankfully, there's only maybe one person that left, but you get um, further themes that are explored earlier, such as an offer for immortality near the end of life, which was something that was mentioned with Mary's mother, which was one of the reasons why she was back in town, coincidentally at the same time that Smoke and Stack returned. And the passing on of the offer, when you've been around the world, you've seen everything, and you're just tired, and you just want to see what could possibly be next. It was a very nice and touching ending to the movie, and it really completes everything and wraps everything up in a nice bow. A lot of representation for freedom and what that means. The brothers are World War I veterans, but they have to live a life of crime, and it's a very representative thing for black soldiers at that time coming back home. They don't get a chance to have the freedom to live the American dream, because they don't have the opportunity to take advantage of VA loans or FHA loans like the white soldiers are able to. For their cousin preacher boy, it's freedom to live as an artist and to play the blues, because he feels that tug of the church and he's unable to do the things that he really, really wants to do. Um, the returning home during Prohibition to open up their own establishment, and the DIY ethics of putting the juke joint together in one day, and sometimes just having the bare necessities, and that being enough when you need that sanctuary for your tribe, is very big in the film, and it's something that was passed down through the numerous subgenres such as metal and punk and rap, and that's very cool to see. Um, Another cool thing that I liked that they touched on was the tension in the public area with Mary and Stack, because this is before Emmett Till, and this is roughly a decade after the Tulsa Race Massacre. So most of these people are old enough to remember the Red Summer of 1919. So there is this tension where, she's speaking about these sexual things in a mixed crowd, and Stack is obviously very uncomfortable with the situation, because it's very dangerous. The brothers coming back from Chicago, and the trope of the prodigal son or sons in this case coming back home, and how Smoke mentions that he has been all over the world but still can't outrun his past. But he also states to Preacher Boy that Chicago, though seemingly worlds away, still presents the same racial issues back home. And, in regards to the Great Migration, and how almost every black person from the South, including myself, has family somewhere else, be it either Chicago, Ohio, LA, or New York City, because we had a relative, that decided, hey, I want to go move to this other place in search of a better life. And that's very cool to see that that is woven into the tapestry of this film. Something I haven't heard many people talk about, and it could be because they aren't really of the region's culture, is Smoke getting rid of the mojo bag at the end of the film, symbolizing that he's ready to die. I mean, he's lost his twin brother, the person that he came into this world with. He's lost his lover, his woman, who is the mother of his child, and he seemingly has nothing else to live for. So when he gets rid of that mojo bag, he's getting rid of his invincibility, which is something that they talked about earlier in the film. And speaking of that scene, it's such an enjoyable scene when the Grand Wizard of the clan gets his comeuppance. And it really reminds me of the ending of Django Unchained. Cons with the film. If I had to really nitpick cons, it would be the length. For some people with shorter attention spans, or those who are expecting a nonstop horror film, the length is probably going to get to them. For me, my only real gripe would be, not having subtitles, being that this is a movie that has a few characters with some strong, deep Mississippi accents. So you admittedly don't get all of what they're saying, which is something I hope will get better on my second watch. I thankfully won't have that problem when it will be released on video on demand and physical media. But also, my last gripe would probably be the final battle sequence. Everything has been building up towards this, and it moves pretty quickly. And it's pretty hard to tell exactly what's going on at the moment, though it's not hard to go with it. It's just going to be one of those moments that you'll want to go back and watch when you see it in theaters again or you own it. It just seems like Ryan kind of pulls his punch a little. Like he was afraid that he was going to, you know, he was like, if he was afraid that if he went all out with it, the ending, that people would kind of lose sight of what he's trying to say overall with the film. It's not really a huge gripe since, you kind of go with it and it's the action that you've been wanting. But I couldn't help but notice that during that section, seemingly extra bodies just come out of nowhere in the juke joint to add to the kill count. So it's not unreasonable to, think that, there were still plenty of people in there hiding. But I have to pay attention to that on my next watch to see if that there were indeed extra people just hiding in the shadows. Um, it's my minor gripe that it would keep me from giving it a perfect score, but at the moment, I feel that that could honestly change in the future, as there are many perfect films that are flawed in some way or another. But as time goes on, those critiques kind of hold less weight. For example, check out the goof section of your favorite film on IMDb, and I bet you something is there. It just seems to go by a bit quicker than I personally would have liked, but I would have drawn the battle out for another day since, I was enjoying this being such a fun film. I didn't really want it to stop. So, that along with what I mentioned earlier would be my negatives. If I just had to pick something, and had to nitpick, it would be those. And I just don't want to seem like I'm being completely biased and being a victim of the moment. Altogether, I would definitely rate it a 4.5 out of 5. um Man, guys, this has just been a fun film. I absolutely loved it. I totally can't wait to see it again, and I highly recommend that you do it as well, travelers. See it on the biggest screen possible and thank me later for it. Well, travelers, if you enjoyed that very passionate, from the heart review of Sinners, go ahead and give me a like, or as we say on this channel, a Ash Williams severed hand. It helps get the channel out to other horror fans that would enjoy similar content. I go to horror conventions, I go to filming locations, I do live watch parties, all types of fun things on this channel. You don't want to miss out, travelers. I am your travel guide, Brendon. Ask you also to comment in regards to your thoughts on this movie. Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Did you feel it was too long? Did you think it was the right length? Who's your favorite character? What was your favorite moment? Did you also get emotional? Hey, just tell me whatever you thought, guys. And lastly, hit that subscribe button so that you are here, and hit that notification bell so that you know whenever some new content drops on this channel, guys. It is very scary in those streets, travelers. So let me know that you made it home safely.